Welcome to another great episode of Ask the Expert on Contingent Workforce Strategies LinkedIn group. And this is a really cool topic that, hasn't got as much press lately as everything going on in the gig economy, but it's a huge way that work is getting done today. So I wanted to talk about the topic of working with and optimizing working with offshore and global resources. And we've got the expert of the century to talk on this topic today, Satyen Chokshi from TalentRupt, who's been, all over the spectrum with his career, from starting off as a client in the IT recruiting space, and then an entrepreneur and an investor in staffing companies and other things related to our industry, and runs a very successful and continuing to grow offshore company. So thank you for joining us today, and tell us more about your career. Like, how did you get to this position?
Thanks, Jeff. Firstly, thanks for having me on this. I've been in the staffing space, I would say, for over 23 years now. But what I did was, way back, I always had that I actually wanted to open up my own shop. And the way I felt that I should go about it is try to understand what each of the players that are involved in and how they make their decisions and how I can kind of help it, but actually sitting in their seat and understanding how what they think about and how they interact with vendors, and seeing how can I actually change the way they actually look at things, right? So back when I came over here, I was a technologist. I used to do web designing. Things went down because of the 2000 bust. But then I went on to joined a staffing agency. So I actually wanted to understand how staffing agencies work from a technical standpoint. And then I was there for like 6-7 years, and then decided to go on the client side, the enterprise side. And that made it very interesting for me, because I wanted to understand what the hiring managers, how they feel, what they see, how do they perceive and look at vendors, and get that intel before I ever actually opened up my own shop. So I was there on the client side for almost a decade, wore multiple hats. My last stint was with Bank of New York, Pershing. I was at the clearinghouse, where I actually grew the company from 1,000 people to about 6,000 people. So I was there, at very early stage, but it gave me insight, because I was actually with the hiring manager all the time, because they were scaling their outfit. 6 years into it, I felt that I was at that point ready to actually move on, and started my own staffing agency. And we were predominantly in the full-time space of it. But interestingly, because of the intel that I had, Jeff, it made I wouldn't say my life simpler, because I kind of understood what the hiring managers wanted, what they didn't like, what they disliked, what they liked, and kind of took that data that I actually had and say that, okay, just let's not make sure we do certain things that they dislike, how we communicate with those people. So there's so many angles to it that kind of helped me in the 10 years that data gathering that I did. And then luckily I was actually, I merged with another outfit, which was in the contingent space, and high talent. Yeah. And we actually decided, basically, hey, let's scale this together. And that gave me an opportunity to kind of look at offshore offshore recruiting, because quite candidly, when we were looking at scaling our business, we realized that the one fundamental issue that we had, because we weren't actively using offshore resources, for the same reason why a lot of people shy away from it. That being that, hey, I'm not too sure if somebody basically sitting in Philippines or India or something is going to give me that true experience from that standpoint, right? Will they give my customer the true experience? Will they give my candidate true experience? I was so far away from the truth, right? Because I realized that everybody in the game, predominantly people who were scaling fast, had no choice but to use offshore recruiting, right? for obvious reasons, aside from the cost standpoint and scalability factor, it gave them a little bit of an edge. So we started exploring that a lot more and more. And I realized there was a lot of issues with offshore recruiting, offshore RPOs. And fundamentally it came down to just a few things. One, that it's not managed properly. The companies that are over there, and I'm not saying this goes to every RPO out there, but a lot of the RPOs, they've not worked over years. If they've not worked over years, they've not really understood how people over here kind of think about RPOs. And that gave me a little bit more confidence saying that, hey, guess what? I can actually go out there, start an RPO. I grew up in India. I know people. I know culturally how people work over there. And I know culturally how people work over here. And I said that, hey, let me see if I can kind of marry or bridge this entire experience. So I decided to basically start Talent Drop. We started about 7 years back. And it's an interesting journey because what we did was I interviewed about 50 recruiters before starting my shop. And this kind of goes into this topic because I asked them one question. Give me 3 reasons why you left your previous job. That's it. I asked 50 people the same question. And what I did was I just took that data set and I tried to look at what are the commonalities of why certain people are leaving the job. And it'll address a lot of these concerns that a lot of staffing agencies should have because they don't have an exposure in India or Philippines or whatever. It came down to people are not managed properly, which means there was, culturally, India, Philippines, all are run in a different way than we are run. So the human component of it was gone. So we realized that that's a massive problem. And I saw that, hey, that's a low bar. We can fix that fairly easily over here. People are not getting paid on time. That was the second biggest reason why this thing. And that is very common in India and in Philippines as well, from what I hear, right? So again, for me, it was like, why would any be motivated to work if they're not paid on time, right? And third, they just didn't have proper infrastructure or tools that they give these recruiters. So all I did was I took that entire data set and I'm like, okay, these 3 points are the common points. Let's make sure we just don't do that. If we don't do that, then we are just ahead of the curve, right? And that's what kind of made it very interesting for me because I felt that all these issues that I was hearing from these recruiters, because quite honestly, Jeff, I feel that most organizations, and again, I may be wrong with this recipe, but it's worked with us, tend to give the most importance to the clients, as in they're putting their clients first. And what we did was we changed the psychology a little bit. What we said, the philosophy a little bit rather. I wanted to get into the psychology of a recruiter first. So my personal employees, I wanted to see if I could take care of them and make sure that they are heard, then I know, guess what? If these people are motivated to work, if these people have the true experience, they are going to take that and turn it around with that candidate when they're talking to the candidate. And if that candidate gets a positive experience, that candidate is going to share about the agency he's being represented or she's being represented with the client. So there's a massive ripple effect. But if you don't take it and internalize that first, as in like, hey, let's make sure my staff is taken care of first. Let's make sure that they are, they are motivated. It was a game changer recipe for us. We did it consciously about that because we felt that that was just not being done. And we saw the productivity skyrocket, right? And the biggest problem that we saw in India specifically was attrition problem. That is the big problem. Like in our industry right now in India, I won't speak for Philippines, which is quite a player as well, is attrition problem is almost to 36 to 37%. And so we were at 14 and 15%. And I'm like, the reason why that's happening is because we're taking care of people internally. So that's kind of my journey of why I even started an offshore RPO, because I felt that aside from the most obvious benefits, there's a lot other benefits that people are missing out on.
Yeah. And so it started out as supporting your onshore staffing business. And then you saw the potential, not only that it was helping grow your business in supporting the onshore staffing business, but other companies and with other skill sets could also use this type of these resources. So thinking about it, what are some of the wise companies should be thinking more globally in their resourcing strategies? Because you can get complacent and hire someone within that 30-minute, 45-minute commute radius, and people that you've worked with before. There's also myths with working, and you mentioned the attrition issues and things like that it's maybe not worth the hassle and the cost savings if you're looking at. But why do companies look at this, and why should they look at this type of resource?
That's a great question. That is actually the first question I asked myself, right, when I actually started that. So in the realm of global hiring, if you really see, there are several trends that are going on. Firstly, there's a massive emphasis on remote work and distributed teams, right? This trend has been accelerated post-COVID, right, and through COVID, and the recognition that talent can be sourced anywhere in the world. Now, people do realize there are massive advantages to that, right? First and foremost, there's access to a broader talent pool, right, with absolute diverse skill set and experiences. It allows cost optimization, which I think is very well known in the industry, that you can get a resource over there probably at a third of a cost, right? And if we look at that, that has a massive implication, because in industries like staffing, the margins are so low that at some point it goes negative, right? And the only way to kind of combat that is if you look at a hybrid model. We always tell our clients, Jeff, we're not talking about offshoring is to actually get rid of the talent that we have over here. In fact, we're saying the complete opposite. Is like build a hybrid model where you have your main core skill set over here, but you also are leveraging different geographical locations that can help you scale your business, right? Companies can benefit from around the clock operations. We have companies that have come to us saying that, okay, we need to build a help desk system out, or support system out, but we don't have any talent pool in post 9 p.m. over here. That kind of gives them the opportunity to actually scale and to have a global footprint, right? I think that a lot of companies are seeing massive value when it comes to that. Through, again, since the last 10, 12 years, there's pros and cons into it, but we feel that a lot of people are realizing there are a lot more pros than there are cons.
Yeah. And one of the things, and you mentioned in mentioning your advice around having a hybrid model where you've got distributed, some onshore, offshore, and working together. But there's different models that companies and providers have out there. From, we do outsourced milestone-based work. We will sell you somebody on an hourly basis, a monthly basis. There's the whole idea of the providers also have a hybrid model where there's offshore resources, but onshore quality control. Can you talk more about some of those types of models? And some of the pros and cons that each has, in terms of, does it cost more one model over the other? Have you seen higher attrition rates of workers with the different models? Can you give us some insight on that?
Yeah, clearly. I mean, I think that I'll kind of differentiate into two buckets, because I think staffing from an RPO standpoint has a certain kind of model, and then overall hiring global resources has a different model as well, right? So from the RPO space, clearly what we advise our clients is, like, if you have a budget, let's say for a month, and you want to try this out, you are better off actually reserving that cash flow to when you are actually ready, when you can actually look at this on a grander scheme of things, right? the way I look at it is like, if you use, Jeff, if you use an RPO or offshore service as a service, you will fail. But if you use it as a tool, an extension to your team, you will 100% kind of optimize and have a positive ROI. There's no doubt about it. It's been tried and tested. This is not a novel concept. It's been going on for the last 50 years. People in the staffing space who know how to leverage the model have scaled their businesses far and beyond others who have not been able to leverage it, right? And that is totally fair for those people, because they just don't have right now the right vendor that they've spoken to, or done the right research. And that's where I feel that there is a lot of opportunity over there, right? And from the hiring globally standpoint, there's a lot of models out there, Jeff. I mean, we do hourly work as well. We have people who have short-term kind of needs, right? I mean, they want a technology guy sitting in there. They don't have a facility in India, but they want to leverage India. India is absolutely smashing it right now from a talent pool standpoint, both from a talent standpoint and a cost standpoint. And there's more and more about India in the news, and people are starting to leverage that and say that, okay, how do I actually build my tech space or technology guys sitting in India, right? So they may not have a presence. We have an infrastructure that can support about 500 people, right? And there are a lot of organizations that are now looking at that dev center and saying that, okay, why not we actually have people sitting over here? We can do payrolling for them. So we can, if they want to manage the resource completely on their own, but they don't have a resource of how to payroll, we do that for them. So there's really a lot of different models that we can actually incorporate into. There are people, like we have a couple of clients that who have they just want engineers sitting in India, because they feel that there's a dearth of those kind of engineers over here, and there's a cost implication to it, and there's a massive value add in India right now. So hey, why not we actually look at that? And post-COVID, to be honest, and through COVID, I guess 7 billion people understood what it takes to actually work from home, and that certain work can be done and accomplished by people working outside of the office space. And that's where it's actually blown up. So we are seeing a lot more kind of work coming over there. And right now, given the economic situation we are in, people are trying to save money, right? They want to make sure that they're actually leveraging the money the right way. And, is it being put in the right buckets? And so they're exploring all of these near shore, far shore, offshore, all these things are there that they are exploring. And it, quite candidly, it's a prudent thing to do right now.
What, outside of attrition, but even talking about attrition again,
yeah,
what are some of the obstacles that companies have, and are some of them myths, right, versus reality? Or if they are reality, how do companies overcome those obstacles with working with companies to optimize working with offshore global resources?
Yeah. So, I mean, while hiring globally has numerous benefit, it definitely comes with a set of challenges, right? Language and cultural difference can lead to communication issues. Managing remote teams for people who never managed remote teams can be challenging. Data security and compliance with international regulations are a big concern, right? Companies have looked at these things, and now what we feel is there's so much data out there that if companies have start researching in all these issues, right? I mean, the first question that we always ask anybody who's interested in offshoring is like, is your internal are your internal stakeholders in alignment? We have numerous occasions where we feel that sometimes the leadership is in alignment, but the second layer may not be, or vice versa, right? And when that disconnect happens, everything falls in place, because then you have some form of a bias already before actually even trying and testing and giving it a right shot. So that is our first fundamental roadblock that we tell our clients: pass that before you don't even want to test it, because you don't give it an honest shot if you not internalize it right? So that, I mean, I think a communication issue, I'm seeing more and more of this trend, which is a positive thing, is like people are going over that hump, that, hey, people have different accents, people have this thing, but if people are clear enough and they can understand each other, it doesn't really matter, right? Back in the day, people used to change names, fabricate names. That should not be part of your ethos, right? I mean, who you are, right? I mean, you don't need to fabricate the truth. Just be
They
just
don't
be.
all have to be John Smith,
No,
right?
you don't have to be John
People are
Smith.
more comfortable with international names and etc. Yeah. So
And when that happens, Jeff, I feel that experience is lost completely, right? The minute you pick up the phone and somebody on the other line sounds different and calls himself John Smith, suddenly in your head is like, okay, this is not a true experience, because he's all from the get-go, he or she is basically fabricating. There's no authenticity behind it. And I think that in itself, like, we have as a company have consciously made that decision, and even advised clients, unless they really, really want us to do that, we tell them, we're not going to tell them we are from New York when we're sitting in Bombay. And we are not going to change our name, because we want to tell these people exactly who we are. And we are their research team, if you really look at it. So look at it from a global standpoint. And I think that hump people are crossing a lot more faster than anticipated is a good thing, because people know the value of global teams now.
yeah, no, it totally makes sense. You know, thinking about this, and you mentioned some of those obstacles and how to overcome them, and some of the things that you got to think about. If I'm a client wanting to start to research, if I had like 3 to 5 kind of key things to prepare
Yeah.
Myself and my company to get successful at working with global resources, what are some of the things that you need to expect to have to put in place or change to able to work with offshore global resources effectively and optimize the situation?
Yeah, I think it goes down to doing your homework, right? Firstly, I think we already covered that, if your internal stakeholders are all in alignment, and now you guys are going and, you guys are figuring out, hey, this is the right strategy. You doing your homework from the vendor standpoint is extremely important, right? I mean, we oftentimes, when we are talking to clients or vice versa, we're trying to understand culturally how are they, right? Is the cultural alignment over there? Are we working in similar fashion as they are, right? Our overall philosophies in tune with how they are looking at it, right? If that is a complete disalignment, then you're not going to jive with that with that client. So doing that, understanding how they operate, how a vendor operates their business, is the first thing that I would usually ask, right? Are they a cultural fit from that standpoint? Do they have clear workflows of how these how they want to run their operations, right? Integrating communication tools, because that's a big challenge we're seeing, right? Are the communication tools out there in order for the teams offshore and onshore to kind of communicate effectively? And do you guys have the training platform in order to provide that training platform to these guys in order for them to become successful? Because don't forget, I mean, anybody in the offshore space, they don't know who you are. Aside from the fact that they have a job with you, they have no clue who you are. They don't know what Jeff likes. They don't know what Jeff dislikes. They don't know how Jeff operates. So getting that, explaining that culture and explaining who you are takes time and effort, right? And I think that in itself is a good starting point of understanding, hey, do we have all these tools in place before we explore offshore, right? Because a lot of times people get blindsided by the fact that, hey, I just want to look at the cost implications of it. You'll burn more if you actually just go that route, right? Because I have had clients who come and tell me that, oh, I want to work with you for a month. I want to test you out for a month. And that's, I don't have a budget over that. We tell them, you are better off actually taking their money, taking your favorite client out for lunch, and you get a better ROI than you're going to get with me, right? Because I can't, but do you do the same thing internally with your onshore team? If you don't, then why are you treating these guys any different?
Yeah,
right?
building that cultural fit. And
Correct.
then putting infrastructure in place around the communications is important because that also helps with the cultural fit and alignment and engagement, right? You spoke about engagement, and humans are humans wherever they
Yeah,
live. And if
exactly.
they want to be part of it, and it is interesting, yeah, there might be some global brands out there that may, excite people, but for the most part, global resources often don't know North American brands.
Yeah.
So you have to educate them as well, which seems like unproductive time, but you're doing the exact same things with your onshore resources as well. So why would you treat people who are people just because they live in different jurisdiction anything different, right?
I mean,
Yeah.
it's in your interest to do that. If
Yeah.
you don't do that, that learning curve becomes just lengthier and lengthier. The faster and more effectively you communicate as to who you are, that not only gets them motivated, but that gives them a snapshot of who I'm dealing with. I mean, this is what Jeff and his company is all about. And because that communication is effective, they feel that you guys have, like the onshore team, the more communication they do, they feel they have a vested interest in them. And when that happens, that changes the game because these guys are sitting 10,000 miles away. They don't see you every day, right? They don't, and a lot of time, oftentimes they work at night, they work different shifts. I mean, if you have a small team you want to start off with, how do you keep that person motivated? If that person is sitting alone, how do you keep that person motivated? So that communication is very, very important. In fact, I feel you nailed it. In fact, it should not be, it should be a byproduct of your, it should be a first step. It should be a primary step of understanding what you guys want to do and what you guys want to achieve from that, right? That'll help both the parties actually make a smoother transition.
Yeah. No, it's great advice. So, it's interesting because there's so much pushing the remote work and gig economy, and global resourcing and remote work has been around for years and years and years. And a lot of companies like yours have perfected models and understood what it takes to optimize. So thank you for offering your insight to that, because it's not a model that's going away any sooner. Anyway, soon. I think it's only going to continue to expand because, like you said, the pandemic and remote work revolution is here, and you're more and more comfortable working with remote people and utilizing, if they're sitting 30 minutes away in Wisconsin or on the other side of the world, there's lots of advantages, especially because our global talent pool our talent pools are global now, and you want to always the best resources, and global jurisdictions have a lot of great people there, right?
100%. I think you nailed it. I mean, that's exactly what we are gunning for. We feel that that's going to happen. It's not going to go anywhere. In fact, it's going to become even more rampant. And we just, we want to make sure that the partners are right. And if it's in alignment, I mean, I think it could be a massive success story from scalability standpoint as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Sat, for taking time out of your schedule. And again, thank you for talking on working with and optimizing offshore and global resources.
100%. Thanks for having me, Jeff. Talk to you soon.